first? Great, so welcome to the Omkring Institute. I don't know how many of you have been here before, but you're very welcome. We are a liberal think tank that gives out books and have seminars about various topics. And my name is Tove, and I work as a project manager here. And we're here today to listen and hopefully have a discussion about migration. Probably the most talked about topic these days. And here to talk about this, we have Krista from the UNHCR that will talk about your project that you have about migration from the African Horn. So I will give the floor to you first.
Thank you. Glad to be here. As Tommy said, my name is Krista Ward, and I'm a project manager for a project by UNHCR called Telling the Real Story. That is a project mainly targeting refugees and asylum seekers from the Horn of Africa, and specifically Eritrean and Somali refugees. The reason why UNHCR came up with this project in the first place is because it was first conceived 2 years ago when the highest number of refugees traveling through the Mediterranean were from these two countries. And the highest number of casualties was from the central Mediterranean group. And the project was conceived after thorough research with the refugees in the Horn of Africa, that is in Ethiopia and Sudan, and also with the diaspora in Europe. And the reason why this project was then developed was because out of the research it was realized that there's very limited information, or there is to some extent some information on the dangers associated with traveling to Europe via the Mediterranean, but the knowledge on the actual realistic dangers that have been communicated by the community itself back to the people is not present. There's been, once the refugees are in Europe, they do not actually report on their current situation. They're not open about what they have endured during the journey. They're not open about the extortions, the violations that has happened to them. And they just report that they're very happy that they've made it to Europe. And also social media has been one of the pull factors because of a lot of families invest so much to get the refugees to Europe, and once they're here, they have to keep up appearances, keep up that they're successful even though they're not, keep up that they're living a good life even though they're not, and this is also a pull factor. But of course they're very serious and very serious push factors. I mean, in these parts of the world, there's repression, government repression, there is, in Somalia for instance, there is Al-Shabaab. These are clear and definite push factors that as refugees, of course, they would need protection. So telling the real story is mainly based on testimonies that have been gathered from refugees who are in Europe. And these testimonies will be shared ultimately with refugees in the Horn of Africa as well as Somalia. So I will just start by sharing with you one of the testimonies before I go on. So this testimony, just to give you a brief background of it, because the videos are not that long, but this particular one does not touch on the reason why she left. But there's another video that touches on it. She was a 17-year-old girl, and she was married off. She was captured by Al-Shabaab and imprisoned, and then they wanted to marry her off to one of the gang members, and she escaped. She had been, her legs had been shackled together, and she ran off to Ethiopia. And one thing about particularly Somali refugees is very little knowledge on what is on this journey. They're not aware of the extortion. They're not aware of the amount of money that is required of them. There's actually a belief that it would be quite easy to reach Europe. And her, for instance, she had no plans to come to Europe. When she escaped from her captors, she moved into Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia she was told by other Somalis that people are going to Europe, so go to Europe. And she actually thought that she could walk to Europe. She had no idea how far it was. She had no idea about the atrocities in Libya. So this testimony sort of touches on what she experienced while in Libya. And when we talked to her, she was in Milan and she was looking to move on to another European country. Unfortunately, we don't know where she is. This is not this is someone else's.
This is not So, again.
The other place.
Okay.
Add more.
markeed soo sisto dhan qornay inta soo distay waa inaysaa aniga shaqsi ahaantayda ku dhacday cid kale kama wahan inta aniga ku dhacday kana aad u shaqeynayso shay والله شغلت فيديو بس تامبان تقريبا إلى هو كوشة الجماعة مطلوب طبعا خلاص إحنا نقول لنا نضيف الدروب فيها عصا شغلنا مع عصا ضرورة شغلنا مع تنسيس ما تنقول شغلنا في سام حسن أبو ما كنت بسكوت فيديو على رمى
If I may add, other than informing the refugees in Africa of the dangers of this journey, one of the most important aspects of this project is also to highlight, because we hear a lot of the news on the Mediterranean, the concentration is in what's happening on the water. But unfortunately, from our research and from talking to the refugees that we spoke to, it's terrible to say, but the water is actually the best part of the journey. And they say they would rather die any time in the water than go back to Libya because of the atrocities that take place in Libya. So as part of this project is to highlight the need to have more protection, more governmental support in the Sahara. MSF has said that the Sahara is probably the worst migrant route in the world. There is no account of how many people die on this route. Right now, there are specific efforts for governments to work with counter-trafficking strategies, and also this is also one of the purposes of this project, is to be able to highlight the specific routes that refugees are trafficked through in order for countries to be able to also counter the trafficking. And most importantly, also looking at Mahim, she had no idea. The smugglers would tell you that, I have a cruise boat and I have an X success rate and you will make it to Europe. So there is a lot of myths that are perpetrated by the smugglers that a lot of refugees are not aware of. So if I sort of go back, giving a brief background, you might know that there are three Mediterranean routes. There's the Eastern Mediterranean route, of which we hear about today, traveled by Syrians and Afghans, which is through the Aegean Sea. And there's the Western Mediterranean route, which is up from Morocco to Spain. And then there's the Central Mediterranean route, which mainly takes in refugees and migrants from the Horn of Africa, as well as West Africa. And the figures to date, as of the 23rd, that was on Tuesday, right now, the number of individuals, of course, traveling on the eastern route, as you've seen, has increased, 102,000, getting into Greece. And from Africa, it's from the central Mediterranean route, that is Libya, 7,500 have made it to Italy, and there's been 92 deaths. Just on the 22nd, there was a boat from Libya that was rescued with 942 migrants. Well, this figure from the central Mediterranean route is this almost the same as last year. There's the same amount of people traveled through this route last year, mainly because at this time of the year, the Mediterranean is very choppy, it's very unstable, and the number of people traveling reduces. But later on in the summer, that rises. If you see here in 2015, Eritreans were the highest number, and then the Somalis have accounted for 9%, the Eritreans accounted for 27%. And if we look at the specific routes, from Somalia, naturally, if you're from Somalia, you're going through Ethiopia and into Sudan, and then up to Libya. And if you're from Eritrea, you would get in either from Ethiopia or Sudan and then move on to Libya. Last year alone, the number of Eritreans that were getting out of Eritrea every month was 5,000 a month. That is a lot of people. There is no official data on the number of Somalis. And once you're in Ethiopia, usually, then it's a bit of you still have an opportunity to decide what smuggler you can choose. And often at this point, the smugglers don't even ask for money. And I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of people embark on this, because they're told you're going to pay me once you're in Italy. So when they get to Khartoum, then maybe there's a fast payment. But after Khartoum, it's a one-way street. There is no going back after Khartoum. There's no traffic going the other way. And this between Khartoum at the border there, all the way to Libya, nobody knows how many people are lying in the desert, dead from thirst, from just beatings, from all sorts of atrocities. And this is normally how you would travel from Khartoum. If you fall off the truck, it will not stop for you. And they have to tie them around with ropes so that they stay in place. And you stop at the desert and you hand it over from one trafficker to another. And these traffickers, of course, demand all sorts of amounts of money from you. And then, of course, as you know, then you get into a boat like that, and once you're in Tripoli, you do not have a choice. You don't have a choice to decide what sort of boat you get into. You're forced onto the boat, or you get killed. And by that time, according to everybody that we've spoken to, they did not care. They just wanted to just leave. So with this project, as I mentioned earlier, we have gathered 45 testimonies. We've talked to 45 people. We have spoken to about 300. Majority refused to give their testimonies because, for starters, they were afraid of whether these testimonies would have any repercussion to their asylum cases. They were afraid of what might happen to their families. They were afraid that there was also ungrounded fear. They did not know what might result, considering that these testimonies would be live online and anybody in the world would be able to see them. And the testimonies mainly looked into the reason for flight. Why is it that they left? How did they then decide to leave? Who was involved in the whole decision to leave? And of course then what they encountered in the journey, what they witnessed, what were their expectations of Europe, what were they hoping to get, and eventually what it is that they also witnessed other than what happened to them. Ultimately, these testimonies, as I mentioned, is to be shared with the refugees in Africa. But also, most importantly, it's also the advocacy, because UNHCR has been advocating in the last year and a half for alternative legal means. Because there are testimony givers who have actually sought alternative legal means. They have actually looked for a way of getting to Europe legally, but that is not currently available. There's resettlement that takes a long time, and it takes many years, and after that, you're not even sure whether you'll be resettled or not. And that's why individuals opt to travel this way. And in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, there is the counter-trafficking strategy to be able to capture the traffickers and the smugglers. But most importantly, recently, what we added to this project was also we have a hotline number, so that if you find yourself in Libya, such as the girl who was speaking there, that you will be able to call for help to be assisted. The platform project being an intense internet-based and targeting individuals who do not have internet access is a big challenge. Luckily, we know that a lot of these individuals are on social media. And since we launched a month ago, we've had quite a bit of responses, with the highest number of visitors being from Somalia, Ethiopia, and Libya. And also, in addition to that, we would have offline awareness campaigns at the camps where we would develop the testimonies in a manner that share them in tools or mediums that do not require internet access, and also use the usual communications materials such as posters and leaflets. But most importantly, that the UNHCR offices in these countries have not done before. There's a huge number of unaccompanied minors, and the communications previously on the dangers have not been created to accommodate the minors. So you see children as young as 4 years old partaking in this journey, and you know they will never make it because of all the things that they encounter, but they do not have any communication. And of course, as a 4-year-old, you do not have the complete comprehension of what it is that you're putting yourself through. So that is also an area that this project would focus on. So and most importantly also, we are involving the diaspora in this campaign, something that UNHCR has not done before. Because the diaspora is responsible in some sort. The diaspora finances this journey. The diaspora posts the fantastic pictures on Facebook of their life. So this project, we are bringing together and engaging the diaspora in Europe from both communities to talk about first, the diaspora's responsibility when it comes to regular movement, in terms of also sharing the right information, and secondly, what can the diaspora actually do for newly arrivals? We have been to various centers around Europe. Of course, government centers provide psychological help, etc. But individuals will not share their stories with a stranger who they don't think is from the same cultural background. And this is an area that the diaspora would come in, would be there, and it would be much easier to deal with sexual-based violence in order for people to have psychosocial support. We talk about integration. This is a conversation all over Europe right now. But with the diaspora who have already settled in Europe, perhaps integration would be made much easier, much simpler, and more realistic. So that is also a part of the project that we are currently actively working with, involving the diaspora right from the beginning, even when we gather testimonies, and also throughout the entire conversation. And just to finish this off, in my perception, I do not think this movement will stop if nothing is done in the countries of origin or transit countries. If the situation in the refugee camps is not made any better, if refugees are not given livelihood opportunities. In Ethiopia and Sudan, Ethiopia is a country with the largest number of refugees in Africa, 700,000. But refugees are not allowed to work. You can go to school, but you cannot work. In Sudan, you might go to school, but you definitely cannot work. The refugee camps are in squalor. It is almost not livable. And the refugee camps are very huge. I mean, you could even form some sort of cities in it. But if nothing is done about that, then this movement will not end. I mean, it's the same situation with the Syrians. Trying to solve the problem from this end is not really how to do it. If nobody's looking at the reasons as to why they actually leave, what are the push factors, then it will not end. And that's all from me.
Great, so thank you. Yes, great, thanks. We do know that we have a very qualified and audience with very various backgrounds. Are there anyone, like right now, who has a question or would like to add something? Or else I did. You're shy. Yeah?
Hi, so thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Susanna. I had a question because from seeing this, it's a really kind of very tough story to even watch for us, and we must necessarily relate to it. But at the same time, in many of the countries here in Europe now, there are these ideas that we should maybe try to convince people from the originating country that here in Europe, the streets are not paved with gold, as the discourse goes in the UK, and also in Denmark, they've had a similar discussion. And I'm wondering what you will do to address in the refugee camps, for example, the, I don't know, maybe a potential problem that they would consider this as a sham video, something that has been made from governments here in Europe who are trying to you know, make less migrants come here. Thank you.
Well, that is a good question. We've had.
I actually have the article here with migrants think that the streets are paved with gold. So yeah, great question.
Yeah. Well, that is an issue that we thought of from the beginning, and also that also brings me back to what I mentioned, that we involve the diaspora right from the start, because it's important that when you're creating a campaign such as this, you have to involve the people who you're creating the campaign for from the beginning. We have tested some of these testimonies at the camps, and we actually haven't gotten a reaction like that. The reason is because the fact that they have never heard their own people speak like that. There's never been a campaign such as this where the communication or the words are in their languages and by their own people. But yes, that is something that we were afraid of, that it might be considered a propaganda. What we have, and I think that also where it comes under UNHCR umbrella, being a trusted brand, you could say. We have so far not had that. If that does happen, it's quite difficult. If someone feels it's a propaganda, I don't think you can really convince them otherwise.
Yes? Anyone else who wants to face the rules? Yeah?
My name is Marcus. I know that the Eritreans are a very big group of refugees seeking asylum in Sweden. I wonder, do you know what kind of percentage that actually gets asylum in Sweden or in Europe in general? So is it, will you get a permanent existence, or is there a risk of it that you sort of have to live in some kind of shadow existence where you can't get a legal status?
Well, there are Eritreans particularly, there's a 98% acceptance rate.
Okay.
And they often, if not always, get us refugee status. Yeah. When it comes to Somalia is a mixed bag, because there are parts of Somalia that are, of course, under Al-Shabaab rule, and then there are parts of Somalia that are not. So the Somali refugees who come into Europe, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some of them do not get accepted and actually do get deported, and some do.
Yes? So, now?
Hi, my name is Annika. I'm wondering if you've talked to the diaspora and if you've seen any patterns in why they don't tell their families about their experiences. What are the reasons behind you're not telling? Is it because you want to save your family, you want your family to do the same thing so you can be together, or could it be pride, or what have you seen?
It's definitely not wanting your family to do the same, to make the same journey. That's definitely a fact, and a lot of those who've made it do. When they know that a family member wants to make it, they tell them no, don't do it. The reason why they don't share it also is cultural, because women do not talk about the atrocities that they've encountered because they're afraid that they might not be accepted back into the community. If you're a woman who has been raped, no man is going to want to marry you, and also the pressure of also maintaining appearances. You still want to make your family think that everything is okay, and whatever social welfare money you get, you're going to send it back home. You might not have any food. Perhaps you wanted to say something. Yeah.
My name is Amy. I want to know, you say 98% of Eritrean coming to Europe get acceptance. Could that be the pull factor that make Eritrean leave and come to Europe?
Well, the reasons why that, I don't think they, unless they have access to be able to go through data like that. But yes, they are aware that Eritreans do get accepted. But the reasons why Eritreans leave is because of the situation of government being a dictatorship. And the reason why they don't stay in Ethiopia or Sudan is because of the situation in Ethiopia and Sudan, being countries in which they know that they will not get any access to a livelihood. And then also there's a lot of focus on the people who make it. They all say, okay, fine, 2 people made it, 500 people died, maybe I'm going to be one of those 2 people who make it. There's a lot of focus on just the success factors, and there's a lot of ignoring of the actual atrocities that might happen to them.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I'm one of the team here. I want to talk about your question about the diaspora, because for the Somali diaspora, this is very real. And I was talking to Chris just the other day about my own experience in this case. One of my younger brothers, who's now in Somalia, was contacting me on Facebook and telling me that he likes to come to Europe. And I was like, okay, what's your plan? And he said, no, I have no plan. I want to come to Turkey and someone has to pick me up there. I said, it doesn't work like that. And to be honest with you, I was very scared of that. Because
that he was going to come?
Yeah, we don't give him other alternatives. If we say no, we cannot bring you to Turkey, that he may choose this other dangerous route. And so the diaspora, especially the Somali diaspora that we work with, they are unanimously against this. No Somali person I know wants his brother or his family to take this journey. So this usually happens. The people, it happens because there are no other alternatives for these types of young people. They see this, they program themselves about the beauty of Europe, what they are going to get, and how it's going to be great for them, and they forget about all the dangers. And the other thing is, Somalis being people who support each other, they know that when they end up in trouble somewhere, their family will do whatever it takes to rescue them. They will pay the money. So this is a very serious issue for the Somali community, and I think we all agree about this, how dangerous it is and how it has been for our youth. So that's another.
And just to add on that, we also have a testimony from an Eritrean who did travel regularly to Europe, and his brother years later said that I'm going to come, and he told him no, and he said, okay, fine, if I don't come, I'm going to commit suicide. So you're a bit, your hands are tied. And his brother did come, and he died. He didn't make it, and but the diaspora is left in a bit of a between a rock and a hard place. Because they will threaten, they will say you're just trying to keep the riches to yourself. You're just having a good time and you made it, why can't I make it? So this is also part of the discussions that we have with the diaspora, how to better tackle these issues, how to better communicate with their countrymen back home.
Yeah, my name is Khalid Abdul, and I'm part of the team in the project. And what I want to add on the same issue is like, regardless how much you inform them, there is a kind of mistrust. People do, this social media also played a great role. When we were in a very remote refugee camps in Ethiopia, and every refugee having a mobile and we were paying to chat, that is stronger than whatever we are doing. The other thing is the diaspora themselves are not well informed about the magnitude of the risks. So this project gives the platform to unite those who have made it, those who are potentially to make it, and diaspora who is the financer of the journey. So having this common platform would at least affect the decision making of those potential risk takers. Otherwise, if I tell my family member not to do it, and at the same month I'm sending money to my family, then it's a controversy for him. How is he telling me like life is hard, it's risky, but still, he's in the supporting side of the family. So it's very difficult, but what I observed is even the diaspora are not well informed. It's only media information they get. More than media, getting first-hand information. I was gathering this testimony from most Eritreans, and sometimes I could not continue the interviews. You have to stop it. It's more than what I expected, having been well informed, close to the issue. It's beyond what one can imagine. So the diaspora, I think, they could do more once they see the testimonies. It's more than what I expected.
Yes, otherwise I would like to ask, these smugglers that are helping people, who are there? Are there like criminal networks or people trying to realize these refugee streams, or?
Well, of course they're criminal networks, because being a smuggler is a criminal activity. But it's, unfortunately, it's also a matter of supply and demand. In Somalia and in Ethiopia, there are smugglers who are available to do this, and they're not, by the refugees, they're not regarded as bad people. Like in Somalia, they're not regarded as bad people. Your neighbor across the street is a smuggler, say you want to do a talib, which is a regular trans journey, and say go talk to so-and-so, and then he will help you. But of course, then the degree of evil gets to another level in Libya, because the things that they're exposed to, the atrocities that the refugees are exposed to, is complete inhuman. So yes, it is a criminal network, without a doubt.
Okay, is it possible for UNHCR to help the refugees in Libya with camps or with the UN soldiers or something? Or having camps in northern before they leave to Europe or something?
Unfortunately, after the fall of Gaddafi and the situation in Libya right now, being a somewhat failed state, UNHCR doesn't have any presence in Libya at all. The office that deals with Libya is actually based in Tunis. And right now, UNHCR is working with implementing partners such as the ICRC. And the only assistance, because once you're in Libya, you're possibly definitely moving on. The only assistance that is being offered now is numbers to call to be rescued. But at the moment, because of the situation in Libya, UNHCR doesn't have any presence there.
You say smuggling is people in Somalia, it's true, they don't see them as criminal people, only as people that will help one or make some money with that. But the smugglers in Libya and the smugglers inside Somalia, for example, are they similar? Do they work? Do they know what's going on? And my second question is, every time I meet some persons, Somalis who come through that way, and I ask them, how was it? And that was horrible. I asked me, do you know about it? He said, yeah, I used to hear about it. But I never believed it. How come they never believe it? I still don't get it.
Well, it's to answer your first question, because then there's a difference between a smuggler and a trafficker. A smuggler is paid to get you somewhere, but then the trafficker holds you, and you don't have a chance to escape. You're literally in a kidnapping situation. And of course, like I mentioned, the degree of atrocities in Libya are worse because you have nowhere else to seek help. You're not going to run into the Sahara. Where will you go? And they know that. But then in Somalia, then you have a choice through a friend, which the refugees do mention, to tell you which smuggler is better, don't want to believe this one. It's a more fluid sort of decision making. What was your second question?
That's how they know, never believe the history.
Yeah.
People say that I never believed that.
Yeah, and that is what all our testimony givers said, that they did notice, not all of them, some of them did say that, but they did know the amount of dangers of putting themselves through, but they didn't really, they thought that they would live it through. And a lot of them actually got to Libya and wanted to go back home. They said, okay, this is not what I signed up for. I knew it would be terrible, but I had no idea it would be this bad. But that's the thing, that a lot of them say you have to experience it to believe it. It doesn't matter what they tell their friends. Their friends also say, even we were in the refugee camps in Sudan, and we were talking to a group of young boys who had just gotten to Sudan. And when I asked them what the plan is, they're planning to move on. And told them, but you know what will happen? They say, yes, but you have to experience it yourself to believe it. So, it's a very strong drive that drives individuals to carry on this journey.
So, yeah, I just want to add, you said do the smugglers in Somalia have connection to those in Libya? Actually, we did find out that there was some connection between smugglers in Mogadishu who have made some business deals with the smugglers in Libya, where they were taking payment in Mogadishu and where they were arranging the whole journey all the way from Mogadishu to Libya to Italy. So there is some connection. But I believe also the smugglers in Somalia don't even know also about what's going on there. Because as we said before, Somalis don't see smugglers. The word smuggler does not even translate well with Somali. When you say mokallas, that's the Somali word. It's not so bad in Somali language. It's just someone who's going to, it's a facilitator. So it's someone who's facilitating your journey. But they don't know what will happen to these people when they are in Libya. And that's the worst part that we have discovered through this project, that Somalis did not know much about what's going on in Libya and how much bad it is for these people. So, but there is connection between the two.
Thank you. I have a question. What to do? What to do? I am myself. I'm a former member of the Swedish Parliament, and Mr. is a former member of the European Parliament, and you're also a former member of the Swedish Parliament. And I belong to the EU committee, and I had a discussion 3 or 4 years ago with the foreign minister. That time was Mr. Carl Bildt. And we discussed who are the smugglers? Who are the smugglers? I asked him that if he knew the name of any one of those. Any one of those. No. The Swedish Foreign Minister, or I think also in the European Parliament, we don't know who are those. But what we can understand is that money talks in these questions. Money talks. And that's a very serious problem. That's a very serious problem. And if I was, I have been to Ethiopia and so on, and if I was in Ethiopia or Eritrea, there is no hope for me, there is no future for me. And what shall we do with those poor countries? And also, like Libya, it's a weak state, if it's a state. If it's a state. And my question is, in respect to the UNHCR, what to do?
Well, looking at the latest action that EU countries have taken last November during the Valletta summit, having discussions with the main countries of transit, such as Sudan, in finding ways of tackling trafficking and smuggling, that was a bit of a step from the European states to tackle this issue. However, again and again, repeatedly, it's ignoring the reason why people leave in the first place. If there was open discussions with the governments of Sudan and Ethiopia to be able to find means in which refugees could have livelihood opportunities, and it's within the camps, then that would be a reason for people to stay, because they can develop to be a person like you and I. But that is currently not available. In Ethiopia and Sudan, as you were there, you see the refugees, they just sit under a tree all day, every day, waiting for their food once a month. That is their life as it will be until they die. And if there was opportunities to be able, I think this is sort of where the pressure should be in, to be able to create these opportunities for refugees. They are individuals and they do have a right to be able to have an opportunity to work and opportunity to go to school as anybody else. And I feel that is where the pressure should be on, rather than, I mean, it is an effort to try and counter trafficking, but just as you've said, money talks. If there is always, it's supply and demand. If there are people who will want to move, there will always be smugglers. There will always be someone who will be able to facilitate it. But if the reasons for the purpose of movement is not tackled, then it's a losing battle, really.
Yes, I actually think that that was a pretty good final question. Or do you have the last one? Someone else want to be the last?
Sorry. I just wonder, what kind of organization does UNHCR have for this project? How many people are working, and you have like local people in every member countries who address the diaspora, or is it just a central team?
We're a team of 4-5 now in Stockholm, based in Stockholm. And with this team, as you said, Mohammed is here, Khaled is there, and Masai is back there. And they're all from these communities, from the Somali and Eritrean community. And we have recruited an additional team that will be based in Sudan and Ethiopia. And with us in Stockholm, then we work in Western Europe. And then we have the teams that would concentrate in Ethiopia and Sudan. And also, we would also, the team in Stockholm would also handle that activities in Somalia as well. But of course, we work in close coordination with all the UNHCR offices in each of the countries that we work with. And I was just thinking before we conclude, since we're talking about the diaspora so much, I had one last video, sort of sheds a light on this whole diaspora issue.
dadka Soomaaliya jooga waxaa fikirkooda aniga dadka Soomaaliya jooga waxa waa mar waxa ay baahan waxay aaminsan yihiin qofka bini'aadamka oo ma yurub ku nool derbiga العكسية derbiga العكسية
cuntada waxaa kugu filan bes neef xaalka lagu soo qoray sirimada ayaa subaxda lagu keenay qadar kash waa cuntada halka cuntada taala 9 kilo waxaa lagu leeyahay stress ma kala asaga inuu taajiro والعكس كلها كلها أنا كلها كاسرة أبوه كان يوم ولا يا كلها كسر بيتوني لكن أول جوا أنت ما تسميستر من هذا العكس اللي كان في نفسه نيك ما تصومال جوا يا العكس أنت أنا كرتو كبر القاط لكن وكم كان أنت كم كان صومال
وأنا وحوين ما أنت صومال إنك جنوبي وأوكي هي واحدة تاجر هي لكنك ريال ما دران دمر بك جعلين إلى دران أنتوا ريال وحلونا إنك واحد في عن نصوت ريال وحصل ما دران إن أنت كهذا الشيء وحكوا بعزة عبور كشيء سنة ريال كده صوح حصل سنة مو كده أكيد واحد صار مرة وأنا وأوكي إن حيوان كسنة واحد كفكرة وحناينات صوت رئيسه وأيت رئيسه ما تنوش شيء الإسلام ما
وحاوجوا بدنا نشوف نيجي ليبيانكي ونصوغبتي قلنا نقول قبل على قبل هو برضه بدنا نستيعب وقع سايب ولا كمان نبغى نقول جوب فرضوا كاف سيدوا كده القمر قد سوينا كمان كذي واحد سنين ثاني وين النوم إلها كذا إلها كذا وحلوك أبو جميل وقبلها كان هذا يعني قبل سو كم بسنا إذا سوسع بدأ سمعنا كم بدأ سمعنا كم ده أنسمعنا بيرو بقى صوت من ساعة بدأ يقول قال سلام ما ترى يا وجود ما أعرف أنا نقدر كلام ده كيرو نقدر شيء هذا هو سوق الاستيتيك أنا جواب بتاعي ترى مسنا وبعدين عندك هاي بدي واحد هاي بدي استيتيك يوصل حاجة إن حاجة ما بيدار واحد أنا ولا واحد وده كل ما نحن مصنع أنا يكليون تنقى ودليلا على كلام سياسة كشكل يا بلاد وحلا واحد وسوق الدنيا يعني هذا سوق مثلا هو قاعد ما كان واحد كل شيء إن شاء الله يسمع بدك على
So with that movie, we want to round up. But please do stay and keep discussing the issue. And I think that we on the Uli Institute, we keep on arranging seminars like this. And thank you, Krista, for coming. And good luck with the work that UNHCRs do. So thank you.